Hello everyone, my name is Lucky Papageorg. I am the Executive Director of the Alliance of Automotive Service Providers of Massachusetts, AASP Massachusetts. And welcome to AutoSense. Our program today is dealing with bringing you, our consumers, our colleagues in the collision repair industry, up to snuff on some of the ins and outs of the repair process and some of the issues that we face as collision repairers and what you face as a consumer should you have an accident, and the types of things that you should be looking for when you go to a collision repair facility. My guest today is Jack Lamborghini from Total Care Accident Repair in Rainham, Massachusetts. Welcome, Jack.
Lucky, how are you today?
Excellent, excellent. As we talked about in our last show, there's a lot of issues that people are not aware of when it comes to the repair process. Who's responsible for what our obligations are as collision repairers, what an insurance company's obligation is to you as the policyholder. There's so many intricacies when it comes to the repair process that consumers are not aware of, and as we've alluded before, and it's because people don't typically get into an accident but once every 7 to 15 years, somewhere in that range. And it's hard because things change constantly, and those changes from a technology standpoint are accelerating at an ever increasing speed. It's
speed of light.
Speed of light, exactly. And it just becomes so technologically advanced compared to when you and I first entered into this industry. You have a few more years on me, but we've gone and transitioned from being body men to truly being technicians in the repair process. It's not just a matter of banging out a dent, filling in with some filler, and then painting it and sending it down the road, because all the components in the vehicles now are some way or another interlocked. We talked, I think, on the last show about the fact that just the simple replacement of a mirror can be a mind-boggling expense. So along with those changes in technology, one of the issues that we've seen in the collision repair industry is the overall stagnation, for a lack of a better word, of the rate of reimbursement to the claimant, the person who actually owns the vehicle. With all the advances, you have to do so much more training. You have to be certified in order to do proper repairs, have the ability to diagnose vehicles properly, which requires specialized equipment. Then you need to be able to calibrate that vehicle to make sure that when you give it back to the vehicle owner, it's going to act as it's supposed to when it's going down the road. All those have huge expenses associated with them. And over the years, we as an industry have seen a lack of appreciation for the fact that our expenses have increased, and the consumer has been somewhat shielded from that. But that's a trend that has had to change, especially of late. Just like with the medical profession, and we've used that analogy before, that we are the doctors for the vehicle. We have health coverage. When I go to see my doctor, I pay my deductible, I pay my copay at the visit, and then weeks later I may get an additional bill. And I think that's something that unfortunately is going to be a rude awakening when it comes to collision repair for a lot of individuals who think they're fully covered by their insurance company.
If I can jump in here.
Sure.
So what we're faced with today is, this is kind of the elephant in the room. This needs to be brought out and talked about. So I'm going to give you some historical perspective on what's happened with the reimbursement rate, on auto claims, on collision repair. So back in 1990, when I was a young man, 32 years ago, we were collecting typically $32 an hour for repairs. And when I say we were collecting it, that's what the customer was being reimbursed, by their carriers. Okay. Here we are 32 years later, and there's been virtually almost no change in the reimbursement rate to the consumer. And basically the reimbursement rate today, 32 years later, is $40 an hour, which if you do the math on that, I think comes out to about 22 cents a year, which certainly doesn't match up with, inflation or the consumer price index or any of that statistical stuff you can take a look at, over the past 32 years. And so what does that mean, to the consumer? So unfortunately, what it means at this point is that if the insurer will not pay a reasonable reimbursement rate to the consumer is going to be faced with a balance bill. It also brings into question, what is an indemnification policy? You bought a policy from, XYZ insurance company. You're supposed to be indemnified subject to your deductible. And then suddenly you find out, you're not really indemnified. You're not indemnified completely. And there is an ongoing battle right now between the collision repair industry and the insurance industry about this reimbursement rate to the consumer. And it's all about, getting a fair reimbursement rate so that so the consumer can pay for the repairs, and so the body shops can afford to hire talent, train talent, buy technology, do training, and prepare themselves to continue to repair cars, that are basically built like rocket ships today. So this is kind of the elephant in the room, and I want to make consumers aware in this segment today about our House Bill 1111. Now, we've tried to get legislation passed for the past 13 years, and again, this is legislation that's going to protect the consumer, okay? And we've gone nowhere with it. Finally, this year we refiled a bill, House Bill 1111, which really makes a whole lot of sense with regard to solving this labor reimbursement rate for now, but also into the future as we go forward. Now, I know that you're technically more familiar with HB 1111 than I am, so I'll let you give kind of a short, simple explanation as to what it means for the consumer.
Sure. House Bill 1111 is an act to establish a minimum labor reimbursement to the claimant. And that's a key component, that language. It's not a labor rate bill. It's to make sure that the consumer is being properly reimbursed for the repairs to their vehicle when their estimate is being written by the insurance company at a labor rate which does not limit the owner of the vehicle as to where they're going to get that vehicle fixed. Currently, because of the suppressed rate that the insurance companies feel is adequate, $40 an hour on average, a little bit less actually if you take the average here that we're being reimbursed in Massachusetts, is a figure that creates a huge struggle when it comes to our side of the equation. The bill looks at, as you indicated, the fact that the rate has not changed with any great consequence or an amount since 1988, 1990 in that area. It takes the consumer pricing index and looked at to see what that index has increased over that same 34-year period, and it would bring the rate up substantially higher than what it is now. All that does is really keep pace with what the cost of doing business has done. It does not mean that the collision repair is making any kind of huge profits. And the sad part about it is if it had just been a steady increase each year, it would be negligible. The insurance companies have been trying to promote the fact that they've been saving the consumer money on their premium dollars year in and year out by not increasing the rate of reimbursement on the collision side of the equation. If anyone has been driving for any number of years, you will see that your premiums have done nothing but go up, and even as your vehicle decreases or increases in age, your policy dollars aren't going down at all. But none of that increase has been allocated towards the collision repair reimbursement rate for the labor being performed in a shop. And as you said, it puts a lot of stress on a collision repairer. We've been unable to entice and keep people in our industry. It's been quoted that the average age in a collision repair facility now for a qualified technician is 59 years of age. That's old when you look at the type of work that we do. Our collision techs are probably one of the hardest working group of technicians out there, between how they have to disassemble vehicles, get down and basically work off of their hands and knees and things of that nature to be able to do proper repairs on a vehicle. It's a very strenuous a very strenuous type of employment to have and to work at. And I'm sure you see it every day as far as what your technicians have to go through. So this bill would increase the rate to the consumer and allow them to go to shops that aren't being restricted as far as what rate they're able to charge, and to stay in pace with the changes in technology and the training and the equipment and everything that goes into fixing vehicles. You know, we're going to have segments that talk about the different technical terms. So one is ADAS, which more and more people are becoming familiar with. It's in more and more of the vehicles out there, which is the advanced driver assistance systems. And those are accident avoidance. And all these systems and advances in technology have been driven by the insurance side of the equation. They're trying to minimize not necessarily the number of losses, but they're actually trying to minimize the bodily injury that takes place when a collision occurs. That's where an insurance company basically pays out the lion's share of any premium dollars that they come in between the bodily injury claims and the legal fees that come out of those. So yeah, the drastic effect that you see it have on your consumers and the people that come into your shop, if you could allude on that a little bit.
Yeah, I think the from a practicality standpoint, here's what's happened, with the lack of proper reimbursement over the years. First of all, there is no labor pool. There are no technicians to hire here in Massachusetts. You can run ads and recruit people, and you're just throwing your money away basically, because there are more people vacating the industry than there are coming into it. To put this in perspective further, in all the surrounding states here in Massachusetts, the basic labor reimbursement rate to the consumer here in Mass is basically $40 an hour. And many of the insurers have dug in their heels insisting that's all they're going to pay. Now, meanwhile, those exact same insurers in the states all around us, whether it's Vermont, Maine, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York, they're all getting in excess of $50 an hour. So we're losing technicians, to neighboring states. I happen to operate a shop in Raynham, Massachusetts, which is relatively close to the Rhode Island border. A good portion of my staff, my technicians, come from towns that border Rhode Island, and it's just as easy for them to go work in Rhode Island as it is to come work for me. And the difference being that Rhode Island is being reimbursed, the consumer of Rhode Island is being reimbursed at a rate that will allow those Rhode Island facilities to pay their technicians more money. In my particular case, I've lost 5 technicians in the last 6 or 7 years, to the neighboring state of Rhode Island. The other thing from a practicality standpoint, that comes into play here is that the consumer, there's a clause in the standard Massachusetts auto policy. It's known as Collision Part 7, and I would encourage every consumer to read that clause, because basically what it states is that the insurance carrier is only going to pay what the amount to repair your car is the amount that they can get to repair your car from a licensed repair facility that's conveniently located to the consumer. So in essence, what that Part 7 is stating is that the insurance industry, the insurance carrier, has the right to basically control the labor rate of every collision repair facility in the state of Massachusetts. Now, I'm no lawyer, but from an ethical, standpoint and a moral standpoint, how can, the giant insurance industry restrict, the reimbursement rate to the consumer and ultimately to what the body shop can charge, the consumer to have the car repaired? It makes, no sense at all, and that's why our House Bill 1111, is so important. It's a crazy clause that they actually slipped in 2016. But again, I would encourage any consumers out there, take a look at Part 7 collision, take a read on that and see if it seems like that's, even close to fair or ethical, or, again, I'm not a lawyer, but I'd question the legality. How can the insurance industry dictate everybody's rate? This goes hand in hand with those referral shops who have a contractual relationship, with the insurer. I'm going to give you one example. In Bristol County, which is the county that I happen to operate in, there are 151 registered collision repair facilities. Okay, there is no insurance carrier who has as much as 28% of those 151 shops on their referral list. Most of the carriers have significantly less than 28%, some as low as 0%. And yet they insist that as soon as one shop in Bristol County agrees to repair cars for that reduced rate via their contractual relationship with a given insurer, somehow that allows the insurer to impose that rate on every other consumer who wants to have their car repaired by an independent collision repair facility. It makes no sense, and it really, at the end of the day, what that does, it's killing the it's killing the collision repair industry. It's limiting the consumer as to who he can choose, or he or she can choose to repair their vehicle. It promotes the potential for a lack of safety in the repair, because we can't continue to repair cars for $40 an hour and be able to keep up with technology and training and everything else. So this is a crucial time for the consumer and the collision repair industry. And I would hope that we can band together to make the carriers understand that it's not right, it doesn't work, it's been a killer for our industry over the last 30 years, and now something has to be done on an immediate basis to fix that problem. The thing that's happening right now, Lucky, that I wish wasn't happening, is that consumers are starting to see situations where they're going to be balance billed. And again, I think we might have talked about this briefly in our last conversation. But you're going to see more and more collision repair facilities who are going to be forced into telling the consumer, gosh, I wish I could repair your car, I want to repair your car, but I can't do it for $40 an hour. And your carrier refuses to budge on this labor reimbursement bill, labor reimbursement rate. So therefore, you're going to have, along with potentially your deductible, you're going to have a balance bill to pay as well. What's particularly egregious about this, at least in my estimation, is that it's just basically, there's a concentrated group of about 17 insurers in the state of Massachusetts who have dug in their heels and refused to reimburse the consumer at a rate that's fair and reasonable. There are, we've got reimbursement rates for the consumer with over 30 different carriers, who are willing to pay a fair and reasonable labor rate. So this is a problem. HB House Bill 1111 is potentially going to be a solution to that problem, but we need the support, of the consumers, and we need the insurance industry. These are the carriers now, to recognize that they can't continue to pay us at this substandard rate and expect that the consumer is going to be served properly.
So a couple of things, people may not be aware of or familiar with the wording of balance billing. I know a lot of times what I do to help explain to people how and what goes on in the collision repair industry is I alluded to the medical profession. We all have health insurance. We all look at our health insurance as a way to make sure that should we have some sort of a catastrophic incident that we're going to be covered. But along the way, you go to visit a doctor to maintain your health. You pay an office visit fee, and then after some tests may be run, say blood work, things of that nature, the insurance company says, okay, we feel that that blood work is worth X dollars. The doctor is charged a figure somewhat above that. The doctor hits you or sends you a bill for a copay, which is different from your deductible. It's over and above the premiums and whatnot. And people understand that, and they understand the fact that the insurance company is trying to suppress what certain expenses are, but those expenses continue to go up. And as in the medical profession, who cannot afford to absorb those added expenses, nor can the collision repair industry. The collision repair industry has been absorbing that, but with the increase in the consumer pricing index, the cost of doing business, and that's one of the reasons House Bill 1111 was tied to the consumer pricing index. Not only did it start to bring the labor rate up to where it should have been had it just been basically keeping pace with the cost of doing business over the last 34 years, it also puts into play a mechanism or a method by which the labor rate will continually increase to keep pace with that cost of doing business. And that's to set a floor. There are still going to be businesses that are able to afford to work at that level that may or may not put out the expense to do the extra training, to buy all the equipment, to keep everything up to date, whereas others, you had indicated that you're certified in certain manufacturers of vehicles, thank you, there's a huge expense associated with that, and the only way to recoup that expense is through the customer, to make sure that the labor rate that they're being charged by you helps you to cover your expenses, and the policy that they bought is truly an indemnification policy. They're supposed to be made whole again. So that's really the purpose behind House Bill 1111, is to not only bring the labor rate up or the reimbursement rate to the consumer up to a level that is equitable, sustainable, it also allows it to continue to increase as the years go by. And the collision portion of a policy is one of the most minimal portions of your policy. As I may have alluded to earlier, the medical and the legal side of your premium dollars, if you should be sued and things of that nature, those are the areas that have hugely increased and had an impact on the premiums going up over the last 34 years. The average policy has gone up 250-something% over that 34-year stretch, whereas the labor portion, reimbursement to the consumer, has only gone up 30%, less than 30% when you look at the figures.
Ultimately what it means is, as I stated a little while ago, it's going to be more and more consumers are going to be faced with, with a copay or a balance bill. And honestly, there's nothing that shouldn't be. The indemnification policy, should take care of them. The insurance industry needs to come to the table, and reimburse the consumer at a rate that's equitable. I talked briefly about all the states around us getting, much more, over $50 an hour in labor rate, and certainly it doesn't cost anywhere near as much to live in Vermont or Maine or New Hampshire, or Connecticut as it does here in Massachusetts. I think we're the third or fourth most expensive place to live in the country, and we need to recognize that, because we can't attract and retain talent, to repair these cars. I'll give you a quick story. So I go to some of the trade schools, and I will go in on career day, and we do a presentation. We hope to, to talk to the students, who are potentially considering collision repair as their discipline, because they could choose from, plumbing and HVAC or graphic arts or, nursing or whatever it may happen to be. And we're representing the collision repair industry. Well, the first thing a 14-year-old will ask me is, how much money can I earn? And unfortunately, with a reimbursement rate that's as low as it is, it makes it almost next to near impossible for us to compete, with the other trades, the plumbers, the electricians, the carpenters, or anything else that people want to get involved in. So that's another aspect of this that's really going to ultimately hurt the consumer. There's going to be nobody left to repair these cars safely and efficiently.
Well, safely, efficiently, and quickly. Nowadays, when a vehicle goes in, one of the complaints insurance companies have is that cycle time has steadily increased. Cycle time is the amount of time it takes a vehicle from the time it basically comes into your possession, damaged, to the time you're able to return it to the consumer. If you don't have the able-bodied, well-trained technician in order to facilitate that repair, the cycle time, that duration, gets extended. And it's something that the insurance companies have actually brought upon themselves in this process. Increased cycle time is a detriment to them because they have to pay more rental, more administrative, things of that nature. So, it's a benefit to both sides of the equation to make sure that we have a number of well-qualified and not criticizing our technicians, younger technicians coming in. And I'm using the word technician specifically because, as I've said before, it used to be an industry of body men. We used to affectionately call them mudslingers. They would pull out a dent as much as they could and then fill it in. It's become very technologically advanced. And, you alluded to the fact that we're losing technicians over the border to states that can pay more. We're losing technicians to other industries. Current technicians that we can ill afford to lose will go to work for Amazon because they can make more money. We've had recent Labor Rate Study Commission hearings about the issue, and to talk about, what the legislature could potentially do with certain bills that are in front of them and make recommendations. one of the great testimonies that I heard was from a vocational school teacher who indicated that as an industry, the collision repair industry is very exciting to students, and they get enthralled with it. They really want to learn what's going on. But again, as you said, their ultimate goal is to be able to make a living, support a family, buy a house, do all those things that everyone strives for. But at the current rate of reimbursement to the consumer, which then equates to what a collision repairer is making and being able to pay their staff, it's impossible. And you know, the comparisons we talk about a lot of times is to plumbers or to electricians, all great trades. But to take a piece of metal that's been gnarled and damaged and be able to make it roadworthy again is what really excites people. And the technologies that's needed, the expertise, is something that all those technicians need to be properly reimbursed for. You know, make a decent living for what it is that they're doing in this industry, protecting the motorists of our state. And House Bill 1111 strives to achieve that. If anybody needs any more information regarding House Bill 1111, you can check out our website, AASP-MA.org. The bills are on there. We also have ways of contacting us if you have any questions regarding the repair process or questions that you may have just in general about what you as a consumer might need to know. You know, some of our future shows, we're going to be focusing in on the insurance policy itself. Jack and I know of a few great agents, and we're going to have an agent come in and be able to answer questions and have a general discussion about the process as well. Any other comments that you want to make as we're wrapping up, Jack, regarding?
Yeah, I think just in closing, you know, again, this is just my general advice for, you know, for consumers who are, you know, faced, you know, with a collision loss. You know, go seek out, you know, that independent collision repair facility that's going to repair your car correctly and safely, and is also going to be able to provide you, you know, with all of the information and all of the realities that you're going to have to deal with, you know, in this collision loss. You know, don't blindly be led by the insurance carrier as to what to do. You know, be your own best advocate, and then seek out a collision repair facility who will also advocate for you.
Right, because the two together, the collision repairer and the consumer, you know, obviously 2 to 1, you know, as long as you're knowledgeable, you're able to advocate for yourself, you know, you can make a very good case with the insurance industry as far as, or your carrier, to make sure that you're being properly reimbursed. And there's so many reference points that are out there that a good collision repair is able to reference and help make that case. You know, I want to thank everybody for joining us again today, and we look forward to having you back and listening to AutoSense and gathering information so that you can become your own best advocate. Thank you.